Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Monday, November 8th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. It is the most wonderful time of the year. It is qualifying offer season in Major League Baseball. Yes, this is what I live for. I live to know who and who did not receive qualifying offers from their respective teams, who will have draft pick compensation attached if another team decides to sign these players in free agency, and just how messed up health-wise are the players who did not receive qualifying offers. These are the things that keep me warm at night,
I was just saying it's house shoe season. Those are the things that keep me warm. The funny thing about this is any of this gonna be the case in 2 months? Like, it's like with the new CBA, will there be qualifying offers? I mean, there's some. I think there's at least one proposal from the union side that basically gets rid of qualifying offers.
Yeah, you don't want this if you're a player. Qualifying offers are not a good thing for you. You'd rather just be unencumbered going into the market. So I am, of course, joking. I am not as into qualifying offers as it may seem, but they're fun to talk about.
Somebody was saying that JD Martinez, maybe the best move for him, it's not the move he made. He picked up his $19 million player option, but that the best move he could have made might have been to reject the $19 million option so that he gets the qualifying offer this year, loses about $1 million, but becomes a free agent without the qualifying offer attached to him.
Right, because getting another year older with that profile, having that compensation in the future, yeah, okay, I could see that being part of the calculus there. But
I think if I was his agent, I'd say take every dollar you can right now because you're an old DH.
Yep, and teams increasingly are not interested in paying players like that. But the number of players, I think it was 14 in total that actually received the qualifying offer. I'll just lightning round run through them real quick. This is in alphabetical order. I think it's the list from MLB Trade Rumors. Brandon Belt, Nick Castellanos, Michael Conforto, Carlos Correa, Freddie Freeman, Raisel Iglesias, Robbie Ray, Eduardo Rodriguez, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Trevor Story, Noah Syndergaard, Chris Taylor, and Justin Verlander. Now, in that list, like, a lot of those guys aren't a surprise. Like, every great free agent like Correa and Freeman and Seager, those guys always get a qualifying offer, and it doesn't change the market for them at all.
Almost none of them will take it.
It's a guarantee that they won't, because they're looking at huge contracts, much, much longer than a 1 year, $18.4 million deal. There's a few names on that list, though, that I think are interesting, because like Brandon Belt, for example, keeping him in San Francisco and him getting one more year at $18 million. He's the kind of player that's not probably getting a multi-year deal based on age and injury history. So it could be the best of all worlds for him to end up staying in San Francisco at that rate. Because even if he only gets the qualifying offer this time, gets the free agency next year and gets like $4 to $6 million for a year or something, that's probably more combined than what he'd get on the open market right now. Is he getting more than 2 for 25 as a free agent if he leaves?
I don't know. I don't think so. And in fact, I think this could be the basis of a discussion started between him and the Giants that leads to something like what Brandon Crawford got, but less. So Brandon Crawford got 2 and 32, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he got?
It sounds about right.
Crawford got Brandon
Crawford. I didn't commit that one to memory for some reason. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, 2 to 32. I wouldn't give Belt that much, but if you already, if he's like, I'm gonna accept this, you're already in it for 18. Maybe you do something like 2 for 30, 2 for 24 or something. Offer him, there's 6 for the next year or something. They've said they would do stuff like that. So anyway, I think Belt might take it. I think Raisel Iglesias might take it because, you're probably looking at something like 3 for 30, 3 for 45, maybe at tops, 3 for 40. And you could get 3 for 40, or you could get 1 for 19.
I think he's borderline.
Get 3 for 30 again later.
Yeah, like he could definitely do it. Trevor Story, I never thought I would actually believe it was possible, but I don't think he wants to stay in Colorado, period. So there's part of that.
He's already sort of said he won't.
But I do wonder if it's more of like a Marcus Semien situation where he does end up taking a shorter deal, proving that this year was just in fact a down year, and then he can come back and cash in the way we expected him to a year from now. Like that would be shocking.
Especially because he has to prove to some people. I think a lot of people in baseball are comfortable with the idea that there is a Coors hangover effect, and that hitters sometimes are surprisingly good when they leave Coors.
Right.
But you could do something where you take a year and then you prove to everyone, yeah, I can still hit. And maybe you have to prove to them that you can hit enough to play third, or the arm is good enough to play third, because the arm is falling off. That sounds bad. The arm speed is declining. Mm-hmm. It's not like his arm's falling off, but the arm speed is declining. So maybe he's a second baseman or a third baseman. Although the third baseman, you'd want the arm, right?
Yeah, you would need arm. So
maybe somebody. I think the Giants are an interesting spot for him. He basically becomes the everyday starter at second base and pushes the other guys, like La Stella and Flores into depth. Basically, La Stella and Flores are a really interesting righty-lefty bench combo to have,
Yeah. No, I think if you're the Giants, you're trying to replicate the build of your 2021 roster as much as you possibly can, and having that extra everyday infielder that can play a couple of spots. I mean, if you mostly play Story at second, but some days you want to play him at short because you want to give Crawford a day off. And
he's a right-hander, right?
Yeah.
So you could actually sit Crawford against lefties, which has been happening, and use that to keep him fresh, and also regain the position advantage. All of a sudden, you got Story at short and Flores at second. He's not a good defender, but you can maybe make it happen.
Yeah, well, Flores is fine as a part-time guy. I think he's a really good part-time player on a per plate appearance basis. The other position player that I think is pretty interesting for qualifying offer purposes is actually Chris Taylor, because I just don't know. I don't know what team is going to go out there and give Chris Taylor a multi-year deal, that 3 for $40 type contract that everybody in this group would be kind of hoping for, other than those big name guys who are going to get a lot more.
I think so. This is a copycat league, though, and Chris Taylor was a big part of why the Dodgers were good. There's been pieces written, like actual research out there that's about how he's worth more than what his WAR number is because of his versatility. So I feel like there's other teams to be like, can I just buy some versatility? Mm-hmm. Maybe I can't afford Marcus Semien in Toronto, but maybe I can buy Chris Taylor and move him around a bunch. So I think that Chris Taylor will leave.
I mean,
or signed to a long-term deal, even in LA.
Yeah, I just wonder what that's really going to look like. But yeah, versatility for sure, valuable. I think the thing that gives me concern about Taylor over a longer term deal is just there's swing and miss. Even though he does so many things well, yeah, that strikeout rate, if it ticks up a little higher, we run into some trouble with him.
I'm in and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I'm in a draft champions league that's drafting right now, and we had a chance at I'm actually. I assume he's a listener. I'm co-managing with the listener. And we had a choice between Cronenworth and Chris Taylor at one point. And Taylor ended up going 2 rounds later. Either we reached on Cronenworth, but we just felt a lot better about Cronenworth because of that strikeout rate and the age.
Yeah, exactly. So again, Chris Taylor could be a great signing for any number of teams, could end up being fine for the life of a multi-year deal, but I thought he was kind of in the middle in terms of maybe being tempted to take 1 year at $18 million, depending on what else is out there. I think Justin Verlander and Noah Syndergaard, 2 pitchers coming back from Tommy John, they're both interesting because they could end up taking it. And I think if I remember correctly, Monday is the day that Verlander's supposed to throw at the Cressy facility. So a bunch of teams are going to be on hand for that. The thing that makes Verlander interesting to me is We're talking about a guy that had Tommy John in October of 2019, if I remember.
I think he also had a
2020?
better health
2020.
record than Syndergaard.
Yeah, October of
Going into
2020.
that,
So he's
just
going to be
an overall better health record than Syndergaard, who had like hamstring stuff, and
yeah, I think lat stuff too. But
yeah,
so we're almost like 18 months removed from Tommy John for Verlander. Once
there is some research that suggests the longer you wait, the better the outcomes are.
Yeah, so that timing could be really good. I don't know. I think he makes a lot of sense. He might not take the offer simply because he can get more even on a 1-year deal, even if that's what he's limited to. He might get 1 for 25 or 1 for 30. But then, of course, again, the Astros would get that compensation if he goes elsewhere. So that's pretty interesting. Syndergaard, I mean, it is rare.
Like it's almost a lock that Syndergaard takes that.
You think so?
Yeah, man.
Here's the question,
two innings pitched in the last 2 seasons. All he wants to do is pitch.
We're not going down the Mets spiral today. We'll go down them multiple times between now and opening day. But if you're him and you've dealt with other injuries besides Tommy John, and maybe you're among the people in that organization who have no faith in the medical staff.
Oh, yeah, I just want to go somewhere else.
Don't you just want to go somewhere else? And if you're going to take a short-term deal anyway, like pick your spot and go to a place that succeeds in that way.
He probably gets more. Does he get more? So like there was a level of older pitcher on a 1-year deal that existed last year. It was sort of 1 in 10 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
That was Kluber, Paxton, Hill. Like I know that some of them were less and some of them were more, but it was sort of around that sort of 1 in 10. Syndergaard gets more than that because he's younger.
Yes, I think so. I mean, Paxton's injury history, I think, was even worse than Syndergaard's. Yeah.
I just think I bet he takes it. Then there was also the names that were notable for not getting one.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 on that list being Clayton Kershaw, but number 2 probably being Carlos Rodón. Those are 2 that could have gotten it easily. Maybe Jon Gray, throw him in there. Those are pitchers that you would think most teams would just want because they're like there's an interesting thing where people are like, he's not worth 18 million. Well, maybe not, but the same pitcher that someone would pay 3 and 40 for, they would love to have on 1 and 18.
Yep.
There's a relationship between number of years. Like part of why Bauer got so much was because it was structured in a way that the Dodgers would only be on the hook for 2 years, most likely. So I think that's meaningful in this discussion where I think most teams around baseball, if they thought they had a shot at getting anything from those 3 players next year, they would give them 1 and 18. So I think it's bad news for Kershaw's forearm.
Well, yeah, and I think the simplest argument for that too is that which team's medical staff knows the most about Clayton Kershaw's health? Well, it's the Dodgers. And it's the same with Carlos Rodón with the White Sox. Those guys have only pitched professionally in those organizations. Like they know the medicals as well as anyone. So unless
Rodón started having shoulder issues, which are more concerning than forearms. And then Kershaw really strikes me as some of those Angels pitchers that had like a forearm problem and then took he got like a PRP injection or something. Kershaw did, and he's like hoping to come back. It just really reminds me of all those guys. I think Garrett Richards was like that. Who else got surgery from the Angels? But there was a few where they were like, no, I'm gonna get this PRP injection. Maybe even Skaggs. But they had a couple of guys that chose the PRP injection and ended up getting Tommy John anyway. And I think, just from reading the tea leaves when he went down, like the kind of articles that went up, the way people were talking about it, the way he was immediately ruled out for the whole postseason. And there was no like, well, we'll give it a week and see how he feels, I think I'm pessimistic about Kershaw's next season.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying it's forearm, but you never want to take that at full face value. It could be forearm plus elbow, and they're only talking about the forearm. And unfortunately, it looks like relative bad news for Clayton Kershaw.
And I bet
more. But
the kind of deal that he gets, I bet, is like, remember that Garrett Richards deal that he got with San Diego?
Oh, it was a 2-year deal, right? Like 1 year to get him through the injury, and the second year sort of like, here's what we expect you to pitch. So like, we're going to pay you a lot less for the year that you're hurt.
Yeah.
We'll pay you some more when you come back.
And it might sound like insulting to someone of Kershaw's ability, but like 2-15, 2-20. And what you're hoping for is you pay him $10 million to rehab, and then you pay $10 million for like a $15 or $20 million pitcher the next year.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. I just don't really expect him to be, based on these developments, at least for a while. So
Rodón is a little bit more. It's surprising because I mean he was throwing high 90s in even after the shoulder stuff in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think you gotta, like, if you're drafting or if you're considering his future, you gotta think, wow, that's a little surprising that they kind of were so pessimistic about him.
But I think, while I can understand the injury-related concerns dictating the decision not to give qualifying offers to both Kershaw and Rodón, I'm very surprised the Rockies didn't give one to Jon Gray, since they were trying to give him an extension. And innings are everything, and it's hard to get pitchers to choose to sign in Colorado anyway. So it's an important tool to have in the box if you're the decision maker in Colorado, to be able to keep a pitcher for an extra year potentially by giving him the best possible offer on the market. But I think he's going to get multi-year offers somewhere else, because Jon Gray, for the most part, has been pretty healthy over the course of his career. And he's not just a 2-pitch guy. He flashes 4 pitches. And I'm just curious to know what you think about his stuff and how it might play, not having to make those adjustments going in and out of Colorado, because I suspect there are going to be at least a handful of teams interested in Gray on a multi-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you notice if you look at his curveball stuff over time is that it wildly oscillates. And so, you can say, he's got like a below average or average curveball. I think you could say also, in the parlance of scouts, that it flashes above average. I don't know if it flashes plus, but it flashes above average. And usually guys who can spin as good of a slider as he can do something else with the ball, like either throw a cutter or throw a curveball. Like there's, that's the trend in baseball these days, is to have like 3 breaking balls, and don't worry about the changeup. So I think that, that curve, if you gave him a full season somewhere else, could be a legitimate third pitch. And so, I think it's interesting that they offered him something that sounds like 3-30. And here I'm saying, like, if you're like, it's really close, that if you offer a guy 3-30 and you can have him for 1-18, I swear that's the same thing, So like, I think that they're not valuing things correctly, because like, what's the worst case scenario? Also, the worst case scenario is you get him slightly too much for next year, and you only value him. Let's say that you're for 3-30, you actually value him 1-15, right? Yeah. That makes, maybe that's what your math is a little different than Eno Sarris's. Eno Sarris is an idiot, and it's 1-15, not 1-18. No, you're still the idiot, because 1-18 is the same as 1-15, and especially once you consider that on the other end, when he does leave, you'll get some compensation for it.
So the good news is we are at the point
trading him, or he leaves. He declines the option and leaves this year and gives you prospects, gives you draft picks. So I think that those outcomes are worth maybe paying the extra $3 million or whatever.
Right. Well, so the good news is we have opportunities to act on these things. We have chances to leverage the possibilities of Jon Gray outside.
We did not wait. We did not wait even 1 second. The season ended, and here we are. My wife is already rolling her eyes at me. She's like, "What?"
I showed a lot of restraint by not pushing out rankings a month ago. I'm still working on them. I decided, I'm like, you know what? Let the playoffs happen. Just enjoy that. There's not that much of an appetite for rankings for the following season in October. That's starting to develop now. So now the target date is Monday the 15th, 1 week from today, because then they'll be battle tested a couple of times. I'll find flaws in them, some of the flaws. I'm not going to find all the flaws between now and then. It's just not enough time. But draft Champions Leagues have begun. I'm on the clock right now. I'm literally on the clock right now in a league. Pick 307, and I have Jon Gray in my queue. It's the 21st round. It's a 15-team league. And this is a league where you don't make in-season moves, right? 50 rounds where there are no in-season pickups, so just having healthy pitchers ends up being very helpful as the season rolls along. I kind of like Jon Gray in this spot. I kind of think it makes some sense to at least consider him here. Speed's hard to get, so there's a handful of guys that I could maybe chase that were in the minors for most of last season, or all of it in the case of Jeter Downs. I think it's too early for him. But Josh Lowe is sitting out there, so I think he's a consideration. Maybe possible sources of saves, which are also hard to find. You could throw a dart at Devin Williams around here. I don't know. I'm actually kind of torn as to what direction to choose here.
Yeah, you pieced out on relievers, so that's always some consideration that you have to buy saves on some level. So you have to have something. I guess the thing that you will have to do is have something like 10 relievers on your squad instead of 7 or something, or 7 instead of 5 or whatever it is. You're going to have to do more quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question for you is just like, when do I start accruing the quantity?
Right. Is it too early to start taking non-closer relievers in the 21st round? Well, maybe not. I mean, depending on the quality of those guys.
Devin Williams is probably the very best of that.
I think he's the only one of the guys
Chad
I would
Green?
consider to take here. Yeah, it seems early for Green because I think if you miss out on Chad Green, there are other teams Chad Greens that you can get in round 35, right?
The Yankees themselves have Jonathan Loaizaga.
Right. So I guess the question is Jon Gray worth taking here, or do I take Devin Williams because I don't have any relievers?
In the concept of pitching plus, which is a little bit better of an in-season tool than a season-to-season tool, you can see that in his away starts, Gray's curveball was basically like a 105. And then in his home starts, it was like an 80.
That's a huge difference.
It really is, because if it's a 105, then he's got a slider at 110 stuff plus. He'll have a curveball at 105, and he'll have a fastball at 90, 95.
Yeah.
And that's an above average arsenal, especially with the show me slider show me changeup that you're also betting on like pitching coaching at his new destination.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that is over a strikeout per inning, even in bad circumstances, has ratios that don't completely ruin you, even though you don't want to use him all the time. And what is he capable of? Like a 375 and a 120 for the ratios with a similar strikeout rate, maybe even a slightly better one, and better team context means better usage and higher win probabilities. Like, is that expecting too much if I think he's that sort of ratios guy? Like, I think that seems pretty fair.
Yeah, I think I think he's an ideal guy to have near the bottom of your staff, of your starting staff.
And that's what he'll be. Like, he'll
start 75%
pitcher
of the time for you or something.
Yeah, all right. Gray's the pick. That's the direction I'm going to go, because the more people stop and think about what he might be literally anywhere else, the more people are going to say, "Hey, wait, we should be taking this guy earlier."
And in like a situation like this where it's like kind of a slow draft and the board is open, like there could be like one little piece of news and then he'll get picked.
Right.
Like, the right team, he's linked to the right team or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I do wonder what the pace of news will be. There's going to be, right now, we're kind of coming out of a moratorium after the World Series. So there is news. There's all these qualifying offer news. People can sign people. And we might get some teams trying to get out in front of the CBA or whatever and just, sign someone now because it's slightly more risky, but maybe they think they get a better price for it, or they get the jump on a player that they know they want, no matter what the details are, especially a team like the Dodgers, who's like, I don't care what the CBT tax is. I don't care what the luxury tax level is. I've blown through it. Like, like we're just going to go do it again, or a team like the Giants, who no matter what the threshold is, will have a lot of money in between them and the threshold. They have a lot of money to spend. And a team like the Giants could be like, hey, what if we just get in there and like jump in there and get Story for like 3 and 60, and then everyone later is like, dang, we paid like $240 million more for our shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, there is a benefit sometimes to being a first mover. I think sometimes we see, God, it's usually like second tier free agents that go. I think Robbie Ray was a quick sign with the Jays.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say a couple of seasons ago.
Because the top one wants to wait as long as possible. He wants to, he wants to make sure he's getting the very best deal. He wants to get the mystery team involved. He wants to get like, 3 teams really battling it out for him. Whereas Robbie Ray is like, a guy like that is like, who's gonna, like Andrew Haney. Andrew Haney, I bet, signs in the next couple of weeks.
Right, because waiting it out for him could mean not having a job until March if he overplays it, whereas choosing where he goes sets himself up a lot better. If some other team blocks
exactly.
him.
If one team with like maybe a nice home park for once, for him, or an NL team or a team with a great pitching coach that he really respects, he might sign in a second.
Right. So we'll pull back to the beginning. I didn't mean to dive into, hey, should I take Jon Gray here? It just happened to, I literally went on the clock as we were talking about him, and it was something that was on my mind even before we started recording. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. If
we're only in the 15th, it's a little bit too early for Gray for us.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even all in on saying what I did was right, but I felt like if we got that good news on Gray, and almost anywhere he could go is good news in some capacity, either a better team, better ballpark, better coaching staff, or all the above, then excitement's going to tick up again. People were overdrafting Jon Gray for years in Colorado. I was never one of them, but there's enough there to be excited about him going somewhere else. But let's start at the top. Let's talk about how the first round has shaped up in a couple of these leagues that we've done. These are 15-team leagues, as I mentioned before. If you're watching us on YouTube, we are blindfolded by the first round. I can't move the graphic. At least I have to make a different graphic to make it show up differently. So, yes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a metaphor.
It really is. This is how we live our lives in November. So this is the first one on the screen. The first one we're going to talk about is the first round for my draft. It went Tatis, Trey Turner, Soto, Vlad Jr., and Bichette rounding out the top 5.
Let's stop there. That's 5.
Yeah.
Because I've got a 5.
You got your 5. I want to throw that up. You've got
Tatis, Turner, Soto, Burns, Acuna.
Yeah, and I did a slow draft with Todd Zola at the end of September that ran into the second week of October. Acuna went at the 1-2 turn in that league, and he did not go until the 12th pick. I threw mine back up on the screen just now. The 12th pick of the one that I'm in right now.
I don't think the question is, there was some debate in our draft room, like when will he be ready? But I think he'll make it back. He had surgery on July 22nd. And I think for these types of athletes, like 6 to 8 months is doable. I mean, he's not a basketball player. So I think he'll be doing baseball activities in March. So I think he can make it back for the beginning of the season, don't you?
I think it's possible. I don't
want to bet on it.
I don't want to assume in the first round,
and also how many steals will he go for?
Always a question with a player coming off of just any sort of significant leg injury. How much extra running will they do? But I hope the way players and teams try to think about rehab is more, you are healthy, play the way you want to play. That's almost as much of a mental barrier as it is a physical one. And predicting who's going to trust a surgically repaired knee, that's really hard to do.
Trust factors, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's something you hear from Tommy John guys. Is like that first time you really let it fly.
Right. So there's a little bit of that, but I don't know. Like I wonder if we also think too much about steals specifically as it pertains to these injuries. Like everything else a player has to do, stopping and starting in the outfield might be more rigorous for Acuna. He got hurt in the outfield. That might be the bigger block than taking off and stealing second base.
And I'll have to tell you something, man. I feel like this first round, especially among the bats, is one of the worst since I've started playing. And I'm not denigrating the specific talents. Like Tatis, an amazing elite talent. Acuna, amazing elite talent. Soto, one of the best hitters maybe of all time when it's all done. But Soto doesn't steal bases. Acuna's coming off an injury. Tatis is not having surgery for an injury, so he may deal with that injury throughout the season. Turner is in some ways the most complete player, but he also doesn't project to be the best player in terms of projections, right? So I feel like I could play. I could like tell you the faults of every bat in the first round.
I think that's just a sign that you are becoming older and wiser and more of a curmudgeon. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's happening.
Maybe, but when you can do the same thing for the arms, of course.
Yeah, of course. But I think you are just looking at this through the lens of someone who's now like in the market for life insurance. Like you're just like, what could go wrong? Like, what disaster could happen to me?
Screw and now you.
we're almost the same age, so this isn't me picking on Erickson or something.
Man, is what you're doing.
No, I feel the same way about the first round.
The first round is supposed to be the life insurance. You know what I'm saying? The first round is supposed to be the rock solid pick.
Okay, so like Tatis, obviously it's the shoulder. He avoided surgery. Avoiding surgery is supposed to be a good thing. I think we've talked about it on the show before. How long does he avoid it?
Not a chronic thing that's going to keep popping out. I don't know. I would ding him more, considering how bad Bellinger was. I would probably dig him more if he got the surgery, but long term, I'd be more excited. I'm not saying I wouldn't take Tatis first. We ended up in the 13th pick, which my co-manager wanted.
And you got Mike Trout.
We got Mike Trout, and then we got Mookie Betts coming back.
That's a really nice start.
In your league, Betts went in the first.
Yeah, more picks there. It's like they're multiplying. The bricks on the screen just keep growing. Betts went 10th overall. The way I look at the board right now, regardless of what you think about those hitters individually, I wanted the 7th pick. That was one of my higher priority picks for this particular draft because having done one already, I thought there was a chance where I would get one of Soto or Bo Bichette, or maybe one of the other hitters that goes earlier. Again, it was Tatis, Turner, Soto, Vlad, Bichette, Jose Ramirez. I thought one of those 6 hitters would be there, or I would have my choice of whatever pitcher I wanted. I could take my SP1, which right now is Corbin Burns. So it's weird. I have 2 teams for this season, and Corbin Burns was my first round pick on both of them, and I'm not wearing my Brewers hat today.
Yeah. But having that 7th pick and having the choice between Bichette and Ramirez is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. I think Bichette and Ramirez, they actually kind of strike me, along with Turner, as like the traditional first round pick. Guys with really high floors who do everything.
Yep.
So those are, I think, in some ways, the conservative first round, like the careful first round picks.
The projections for Steamer are currently up over at Fangraphs, the first of the public facing projections that go up. If you look at Trey Turner's projection from Steamer versus Bo Bichette's, the difference is basically 9 steals in favor of Turner, but 2 points of batting average in favor of Bichette. And Turner, I think for everybody, is like maybe the safest early first rounder. Like even if you believe in Tatis' skills, you're worried about the health, and you would prefer Tatis to Turner straight up, you're not feeling bad about Turner because overall there's a good track record of health. He's shown good amounts of power for a few seasons now, still has the speed. Obviously, being a Dodger might be in a position to pile up the best counting stats we've seen so far in his career. That could happen too. It doesn't even have to for him to be valuable there. So I would agree that Bichette is now pretty safely in that first round group. And I was skeptical of him entering this season, not because I didn't think his hit tool was good or anything like that. I mostly was just afraid we hadn't seen that much of him in the big leagues. I thought maybe he'd go through a phase of adjustments where the K rate would go up and the average would come down, and he wouldn't be able to help in all 5 categories throughout a full season with teams making adjustments to him. But he passed. I
also just wasn't sure how many bases he'd steal.
Also a fair question because I think a lot of people wondered
8 in like 300 plate appearances just going into the season.
Right, and we wondered if the Jays, with the makeup of that offense, how much were they going to push guys on the base pass? How much would they have to? Right? Could they be a team more like Houston where they they really don't run. And part of the reason the Astros don't run is because of who they have, right? But earlier in his career, we thought Carlos Correa was going to steal some bases. He doesn't really steal any. Bregman doesn't really run all that much. Altuve runs a little now, ran a lot back in the day, but I think there was reason to be concerned about a lineup that could do as much damage as the Jays, not giving as many green lights as we wanted them to. So anyway, those were my concerns with Bichette. Those are gone. Bo Bichette to me is legitimately a solid mid first rounder who might even creep up into that top 5 on occasion.
I mean, if you want the no warts guys, I think it's Turner, Ramirez, Bichette, Soto, and Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Yeah,
and I think you could make a pretty good argument that those should be the top 5. But Tatis is just so, and Acuna are just the chance of getting a top 3 guy, if they're healthy, is very exciting, obviously. But I think I don't know. If you had the number 1 pick, would you take Tatis right now?
In any sort of overall contest, I think I would take Tatis because I think those extra bags mean so much. In a standalone league where I'm not worried about what's happening in a field of hundreds, if I'm just playing against 14 other people or 11 other people, I might be more inclined to take Soto in those standalone leagues because I think Soto's projection is just kind of in a tier of its own, in a way similar to what peak Trout was. Less steals,
a little bit more peak Miguel Cabrera, I think.
Right. Yes. I think that's
330, 35,
the better comparison for sure.
Stuff.
Because we've obsessed about stolen bases in the fantasy community for years now. The last few seasons, it's been like the primary theme of draft season. How are we going to get enough steals? Juan Soto runs a little bit, for one. Number 2, like the more I've played and the more I've tried to build teams around the occasional Adalberto Mondesi or Byron Buxton when he ran more, guys like that, when I thought, yeah, I can get that guy that runs in the early rounds who's not a first rounder, and I can get most of my bags from that player. It hasn't worked out, and I know that's more of a flaw to health in those players specifically, but to mitigate risk, injuries can happen to anyone, right? I mean, Acuna can get hurt chasing down a fly ball. Guys can get hurt doing anything. I think just from a way of taking this scarce resource, it's hard to find in season. I want to try as best I can to scatter that around on my roster. I want a lot of guys that run some, and there are times where I'll take a guy that runs a lot, and it's totally fine. I just don't want to. I want to make sure I'm not overpaying for that one skill and giving up on surplus value in other categories. And I think with Soto, people might have some misguided understandings about what those counting stats are going to look like. Because the first argument I think you're going to hear against Soto as the first overall pick or an early first rounder, the lineup might not be good around him. No one's going to pitch to him. And I just don't know. I don't think I really believe that is going to be as much of an issue as some people are going to make it out to be.
Yeah, I think they'll field a representative lineup, and over the course of a season, maybe in like a postseason series, maybe they do some wild things pitching wise. But like over the course of a season, I think people will pitch to him, try to win games.
Yeah, he's going to get his. So,
and I 100% agree with your idea of getting a little bit everywhere. That's been our approach. So we got Trout, Betts, just on the hitters. Trout, Betts, Story, Muncy, Grisham, Cabrian Hayes, Cronenworth, and Rizzo.
Yeah.
So we feel like we have maybe 70 steals already in hand, maybe 75, 80, and we're trying to get 100. So like maybe we get like somebody near the end just to pad it, but we feel pretty good about that, just getting a little handful from everybody.
And that's the same kind of approach I ended up following here. I mean, after I took Burns at 7 overall, I went Semien, Machado, Tim Anderson, Springer, Buxton, Bellinger, and Yelich. So I went 7 straight hitters before I went back to getting some arms.
And that's a nutty little group there. What was that? Say that again.
Semien, Machado, Anderson.
No, the next group.
The 4 outfielders, Springer, Buxton, Bellinger, and Yelich.
Whoo! That's the kind of stuff that could like win you the overall.
Yeah, and I mean, I could also.
I don't think it'll cost you that much. If worst case scenario, those guys are just like meh outfielders.
they're all gonna play. Like so,
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, in Buxton, Buxton
Bellinger has some risk of being platooned.
Some, but I don't know, man. Like the shoulder was clearly more of an issue than we all thought it was coming to the season. Like that's fairly obvious.
No, I like buying low. It's just, how much do you think about the concept of, I wrote about lineup diversity in here, but sometimes I think about the concept of diversity of approach in this. So like we were light on pitching, right? And we had Sale, Darvish, and then we were looking at a third pitcher, and we were debating between Kershaw and Urquidy. And like throwing Kershaw on there, like, yeah, you could have a Sale, Darvish, Kershaw season next year that would make us like one of the best pitching or the best pitching staff in our division, or like a really good pitching staff, having spent almost nothing on pitching. But we were just kind of like, are we really going to do that again? So going Yelich, Bellinger, like double tap right there is like, you went there again. You did the same profile. Mm-hmm. You hit it hard.
I'd rather do that with hitters than with pitchers. I think you can dream on that pitching trio that you mentioned, but Sale and Darvish is a very risky 1-2, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
At that point, I don't think your best flyers, like Steven Strasburg, Strasburg might go late enough where it's a moot point, but there are certain types of guys that you don't necessarily want to stack on.
Now we kind of want to buy some innings.
So here's maybe I'm wrong about how much bounce back I have. Maybe it should be 2 out of 3 out of Buxton, Bellinger, and Yelich. Maybe that's going one too far. I am fully ready to admit that's a possibility. What I got obsessed with, though, in the moment was with closers getting pushed up. Closers started going in the third round. Hendrickson, Hader went at 3-2 and 3-3 in this draft. I was looking at Bellinger. The next pick was Jordan Romano. And I like Jordan Romano enough, but you're telling me I can get Cody Bellinger, and the person next to me is going to take Jordan Romano, and I can't go 20 rounds later and take the next Jordan Romano, or at least who I think could be the next Jordan Romano. Like,
because Jordan Romano wasn't anything to start last year.
It seems a little easier to me to find a replacement for a Jordan Romano, a knockoff version of Jordan Romano, my TJ Maxx version of Jordan Romano. That seems easier than finding the TJ Maxx version of Cody Bellinger.
Especially since Pitching Plus beats projections. We're going to have leaderboards for you guys, I promise. What were some names that I was throwing out there? Paul.
You want to take the players in my queue and throw them out there, and then the people in my league can just snipe my queue if they like the guys. I don't think people that I'm playing against here are like, well, I got to get ahead of DVR. I got to do whatever he's. No, that's not how this works. It's more of just them knowing who's in my queue that I'm worried about and timing.
Well, here's a guy that's been picked, and that we picked that we felt pretty strong about based on the Pitching Plus. David Bednar, I think is in a good spot. I got him in the 14th, and the Pitching Plus is through the roof. It's like a 109, 110. Let's see here. He has the same Pitching Plus as here's Bednar, as Craig Kimbrell and Devin Williams.
It's good.
So that's a name that has come up where that's near the end of the, after him went like Garrett Whitlock and Blake Trinan, where you're like, there's a little bit more of a hope situation there. Bednar, I think, is pretty much locked in as a Pittsburgh guy. So
we kind of started this conversation looking at first rounders. We got partway through. We got through the first 5, I think, and we kind of got spiraled. So I'll just run through them. The rest of the first round. Jose Ramirez, clear first rounder, I think, in most leagues. Corbin Burns among the first pitchers off the board. I took him at 7. Kyle Tucker, I think, is frequently either late first rounder, early second rounder, but might even pop up. He went 8th in this draft.
He went at the turn for us, and we debated him against Trout.
Yeah, I mean, there you go.
Like
so
crazy idea.
So he belongs in the conversation for sure. Shohei Ohtani, Also, I mean, we've talked
Just
about
difficult for this setup because you're basically just buying him as a bat, which he
right.
projects as like a top 5, top 6 bat now.
Yeah, even if you just say I don't care, I'm not going to use him as a pitcher. He's my UT, and he's going to do everything. He's going to hit 270 with 35 plus bombs, and he's going to steal 20 bases. Well, that's a first rounder. So
A little bit of risk on that strikeout rate. Probably one of the worst strikeout rates in this first round.
yes, eyeballing it across the board. Tatis might be close.
Tatis is close, yeah.
He'd be the only guy that's close. Everybody else would be lower, and Acuna, I guess, would be somewhat close. At least he was pre this season.
He was cutting it.
Harper looks like kind of like the new Freddie Freeman, where he's the safe, boring late first rounder. Betts is kind of becoming that sort of player. What are you doing with pitching in the first round? I mean, Burns, Garrett Cole, Walker Buehler. It's not Jacob deGrom because of uncertainty about his health. But if you are taking the first pitcher off the board, who is it and which spot? Like, how many hitters do you think belong ahead of whoever it is you have as your first pitcher?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more tempted to take a pitcher in the first round, given how soft I find parts of this first round to be. But I think that Cole, DeGrom, and Scherzer, and even a little bit of Buehler have some question marks that make me a little bit uncomfortable about taking them in the first round. I think Burns, Woodruff, and I guess Buehler are the 3 pitchers that I think belong there. But Buehler really kind of fell off in the second half. I mean, there was signs of fatigue. The stuff was falling off. The spin rate was falling off. He's one of the biggest year-over-year volume changers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's some sort of whiff of risk around there for me too.
Yeah, I think with Buehler, I don't know. I don't know if it's like all those things kind of combining into one where I'm like, oh yeah, he's not first, but he's top 5. Like I don't know if I just want to punt because I don't think there's a ceiling there. But I also like, is he going to just be the same guy when he comes back next year? Or is he going to try and tinker and find ways to get spin back or to bring something out of the arsenal more often? I still have a lot of confidence in that organization and how they're going to handle it.
Good pitching coaching, yeah.
Yeah, so even like we're talking about some in-season decline. Even with that, the final results were really good, and you're not dealing with the AL East now. One thing you have to think about, that edge that NL pitchers have had over AL pitchers. I keep throwing the bricks up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube because people, I don't know, probably find that more visually interesting than our faces.
That edge might go away.
And then all of a sudden, you're looking at Buehler versus, well, I guess there's not even, I guess you got to go the other direction. Buehler versus Cole. I think
they would smash everybody towards Cole, who I think is a back-end first rounder.
Yeah, I think that gap, like if you were on Buehler over Cole because of the lack of universal DH, that switch might be enough to flip the order for you.
So to me, I'm comfortable considering a pitcher around the time when I no longer have a young mid-career stud bat looking at me. And I think that's basically Trout, Harper, Betts. So
you would take a pitcher over those guys because you can get one of them coming back through.
We went Trout, Betts, Sale, but I could see if Burns was available to me, or Buehler, or maybe Woodruff. All 3 were not available to us. We did debate Woodruff until he went 2 picks before us. So I do think at sort of 13 to 14, if you have Woodruff, Buehler, or Burns still, and maybe Cole still out there, one of them, I'd say consider doing it, because the difference between Trout and Betts probably not that big. If you think you can get Betts coming back, or you can get Harper coming back, or you can get in ours Tucker, you can almost get going back. So if it's like a kind of a mid-career, used to be great outfielder, there's like 3 or 4 of them right there.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the first 5 rounds all stacked together, you can kind of see a better idea of what the foundation really looks like. It's more than who are you going to get at 1, who are you going to get at 2. It's kind of who are you going to get in those first 4 to 5 rounds? What does it look like? If you wait on pitching, what's there? If you push pitching early, do you feel good enough about the mix of power and speed that you're able to put together in the rounds after? There's a Bobby Witt Jr. nice in that deep blue shade, round 3. Wow. I mean,
ours is round 9. That would be aggressive, but I would recommend having an opinion on Yu Darvish, because he's fallen to the 5th, and he had great strikeout minus walk rates last year, and just everything else fell apart. If you think that Yu Darvish is still good, he's got a good price on him again.
Yeah, he didn't even go in the first 5 rounds of the draft that I'm in, which is surprising to me, because
I bet he starts moving up as people start identifying him. But he went right after Dylan Cease and before Alek Manoah, which fine, those are both good arms, but they have a lot more question marks around them than a tried and true veteran like Yu Darvish. I think
Darvish is, to me, like, you could probably get away with him as a wait for my first pitcher guy. You're going to hammer a couple pitchers behind him, of course, just to get like 3 in the first 9 or 10 rounds if you're doing that. He's kind of an ideal SP2, though. He's a great fit there. If you had a Burns,
we took him higher because our SP1 was Sale, and so I agree with you. I think that there's should be volume there, and so the Sale was like, well, there should be quality there, hopefully also volume. I mean, they're both they're both risky. I'm not going to say they're not, but we were the wait on pitching team. There's only one team that waited longer than us.
That's a good thing, though. I think taking a different approach than the room is really good. I think the question comes down to execution. Do you have enough late pitchers value-wise that come back and exceed expectations? Do your sources of saves come through if you don't take a closer in the first 20 rounds like some idiot that might be talking on this podcast right now? Was that thought out ahead of time? Well, no, it was a reaction to what was happening in the moment. Have I done enough homework to save it? That's debatable. The Stuff Plus leaderboard is my friend.
Yeah, exactly. For subscribers, if you just look at my last Command and Stuff report, I think it's Why Should Anyone Care About Stuff Plus? I've got a link in there to the Google Doc that I've updated with the end of year stuff and command numbers, the location numbers. And I do think that given what we know, if you're looking among relievers, just look at Pitching Plus, look at Stuff Plus. That's a really good place to start. If you're looking at starters, the projections do beat Pitching Plus year to year. So the way that I would use Pitching Plus among starters is using Pitching Plus and Stuff Plus to identify sleepers. So look for small sample guys that pitched late last year, people who came back from injury, just people that other people don't know whether to trust or not because their samples are so small. You should know more about them because of Pitching Plus. So that's something that's a process I'll be going through, and of course I'll write pieces about it, and we can do it that way. But you can also do your own sleuthing with that sort of background. And we're working on getting a leaderboard up for the new year that you'll be able to sort and filter yourself and do more sophisticated things on.
Looking forward to that for sure. Now, a couple mailbag questions. One was a tweet that came in probably back when the playoffs started, back when the Rays were still a part of the conversation. It was a question about where we think Shane Baz is going to end up going in drafts. And I think players like that are among the most difficult to project. I have a reasonably high amount of confidence in projecting ranges for a lot of types of players, but pitchers that came up late in the year and flashed excellent stuff, that is not the group that I feel confident in, where I can say, I think the market's going to treat the player this way. Seeing a couple drafts so far, I took Shane Baz in the 9th round of the draft that we're talking about right
10th
now.
10th in mine.
Yeah, 10th in yours. I think he might have gone 8th in the 8th round of the one I did with Zola.
Where did Houck go?
Where did Houck go? Tanner Houck went in the 12th round.
So in ours, it went Baz Houck, which I think is right on line with what you were talking about, and Gilbert in the 8th. So basically, if you like a young pitcher of that caliber, you got to take him in the 8th or 9th.
Yeah, at least in the higher
in
stakes
these 15 team
NFBC sort of situations
where you got to go get your guy. Yeah.
That seems to be the price. Now, the subsequent follow-up question is, does that make sense based on everything you've said about Pitching Plus and the numbers
Pitching
we've
Plus
seen
loves
from Boz?
them.
Yeah,
All three of them. Baz, Houck, Gilbert. If you want to put those three in a hand, in a group, in a tier, and wait until one goes, and then take the one of the other two, that's a fine approach, if you ask me.
Yeah, and the order in this one, it was Boz, then it was Gilbert in the early half of the 10th, and then a little discount for Houck in the 12th. But I could see those guys getting clustered up a little bit closer together. We had one other mailbag question about Pitching Plus. This is from Cameron. Recently tweeted that his Pitching Plus model likes German Marquez's curveball the best. Just looking at the stuff, I was a bit confused. Savant says it has below average movement compared to other curveballs around its velocity. I understand that it's thrown hard, but what other non-command features do you think make it so favorable?
We got one here. We got some heat maps for the YouTube watchers. This is velocity against vertical differential off of the fastball. So he actually he's in that group of kind of harder, flatter curveballs, if that makes sense. You can see that mostly curveballs over 82 or so do pretty well, no matter what kind of movement they have, right? On this one. Then the next one is kind of interesting. He has some seam shifted wake effects. So axis delta here is the difference between your inferred, like movement inferred spin axis and your actual observed spin axis. So he has a 25-degree difference. He's in a group of other curveballs and that have good seam shifted wake appearances there at the bottom left. So there's something about his curveball that works. I think it's basically like a gyro curve. It has very low spin efficiency, and that can work. So it's not something that really pops on a Savant page. They don't have this on the Savant page, the axis delta spin efficiency integration, but it does require having some gyro spin and having a low spin efficiency breaking ball to have a seam shifted wake breaking ball. That's something we know for sure. So in this case, his low spin efficiency benefits him. I would say probably in some sort of deception. It's a curveball that acts weird. Think of Eliezer Hernandez's strange ass 80-mile-an-hour cutter he throws.
That is a very odd pitch, as we've talked about before. Nothing quite like it.
German Marquez basically throws an 82-mile-an-hour gyro slider, that he calls his curveball.
But hopefully that sheds some light on what's going on with the.
I wish these things were a little bit less black box, but and we may not have that feature integration aspect that we were just showing you in version 1 on the site. But I do kind of want to put it in eventually because it will help you understand why something is good. Because you can put different features together on the heat map and you go, oh, his is good because it has the seam shifted wake deception, or oh, it's good because of this. So hopefully we'll have that at least in version 2, but I can always make grabs for people who are interested.
Excellent. Well, keep the questions coming. We really appreciate those. Thank you for that question, Cameron. And thank you for the Shane Boz question. I forget who asked that. It was that long ago. I just had a note to bring him back up when it came back around. You can tweet questions at us. He's at Eno Saris. I am at Derek Van Riper. Be sure to barrel up on the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. You can get 33% off a subscription to The Athletic at theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels. That discount applies to your first year, so be sure to get that if you don't already have a subscription. The other way to reach us, of course, you can email us, ratesandbarrels@theathletic.com. Still time to get emails in before I get down to inbox 0 at the end of the year. It's an ongoing effort that has resumed now that the playoffs are over. So send those questions in.
Just give up. Just give up and be free.
No, I will enjoy the lack of weight on my shoulders more if I can just get the boulder off myself. If I get the boulder up the hill, I'll feel better. If I just let the boulder roll down the hill into the village, that's going to be a bad thing.
Well, my athletic email, I got attached to all the Zoom, press release lists.
No, game over. That thing. You just
that's Yeah.
Just delete all.
You're more likely to get me on Twitter than you are in my athletic email.
On that note, that is going to wrap things up for this episode of Rates and Barrels. But we have an episode coming up on Wednesday with Eno, Britt, and myself, so be sure to check that out.
Live from the general managers meetings.
Should be a good time.
Thanks for listening.